Okay, welcome everyone, and this is my how-to guide onto how to write a UCAS personal statement. So the first thing to say here is there are lots of guides out there. There's a lot of support. I'm going to try and make it clear in this video, but there's a lot of other resources that you can look at. There's a fantastic guide on UCAS. Employers have some good help out there. I've got a link there to read. There are other university sites out there, and universities themselves have some really good support on personal statements. So Essex has got a downloadable guide that you can use if you're wanting to sort of brainstorm ideas. Have a look out there. There's a lot of good information. Right, before we get too much further, we just probably need to focus on what a personal statement is. So it's one aspect of the UCAS application that's written by you, and I'd probably say that it is the key aspect. Well, it's the key aspect that you have to write. You write one UCAS personal statement, and that is then sent via UCAS to your up to five universities that you're applying for. Because you can only write one, this is why you can't really apply to wildly different courses, because if you focused on one saying why you wanted to do biology, but it was also sent to another university for geography, that's going to get kicked out fairly quickly because they'll say you're not interested in geography. You also shouldn't name check a university in your personal statement for the same reason. If you're writing saying, I've always wanted to go to Durham, and you also apply to four others, they're unlikely to offer you a place because they'll know you want to go to Durham. So when it gets sent to the university, it's picked up by the admissions tutors who then read it, and they're the people that make a decision on whether you get offered a place at that university. So an admissions tutor is really just a regular tutor at the university who, as part of their role, gets involved in the applications. So they will individually read hundreds of these and be making decisions on whether the individual student is given an offer or not. So this document is all about you demonstrating that you are worthy of a place at their university. We'll go through exactly the structure. There is a sort of a structure that you can stick to, but basically you need to say why you're interested in the subject, prove that you're interested in the subject, show that you've done stuff that indicates that, talk about the skills you've got that are going to make you a good student at their university, and if there's time, talk about the additional things that make you you, extracurricular stuff. And you've got to fit that all into 4,000 characters. It cuts off at that limit. So 4,000 characters, including spaces, that's all you've got. That's why it's important. So it needs to be personal. It's in there for a reason. So there are going to be a lot of students applying to the universities that you do. It happens every year. And if it's a 3B offer, there are going to be lots of students applying predicted 3Bs or 3A stars or 3Cs, whatever the grades are. The personal statement is the one thing that gets you to be able to make yourself stand out or be different to the other students who are predicted the same grades as you. So you need to be honest. You need to try and not be generic. Don't just say things that anyone could say. Don't just say you've read a book. Talk about the book. Prove that you have read it. You don't want to be cheesy. You don't want to be, we'll come back to that later on. And definitely you don't want to copy it. It's got to be personal. They have software where they can see that people have plagiarized a certain percentage of it. Don't be tempted to go online. Don't be tempted to borrow one from your sister's friend who applied a few years ago, because they will know. This should be something that is you selling yourself and focusing on why you are a great student. So it really has to be kept personal. Right, so the key bit of this is we're going to focus on how you go about writing it. So firstly, and most fundamentally, this is important, so you need to spend time on this. You don't just want to be working on this in the middle week of January before the deadline. You've got to spend time on it soon. You're going to need to go through a lot of drafts, far more than you would do for an essay that you hand in at school. I think as a teacher of essay writing subjects, I often get in essays that it's clear that the student hasn't reread because there are things that don't make sense or typos, that kind of stuff. That can't happen with the UCAS personal statement. You need to do drafts and make a change, and another draft and make a change, and another draft and make a change. This is important. However, you can only do this once you know what course you want to study. There's no point starting it if you're not sure whether you're going to do biology or geography. So if you're not sure what course you want to study, stop watching this and go and research university courses first, or talk to your tutor, or speak to some of us. You can only do the personal statement when you know what you want to study. As I said, this is by no means the only how-to guide, and there's lots of personal statement builders out there on the internet. Unifrog have got a really good one, UCAS has got one. The Student Room website has got a good one, and I've kind of based my next 6 points on the things that they say. So this works really well. It's the advice that I've given students for getting on for 10 years now, but there's lots of other help out there, but let's focus on just breaking it down into 6 key areas. So the first bit, the introduction, needs to be attention grabbing. It's got to be, at its most simple, why do you want to do that subject? You've got to grab the tutor and make them see this is something that you are really interested in. Tell them why you want to study law or engineering or medicine or whatever it is, and be honest. If it's something that you've only really got into in the last 6 months, but it's taken over your world because of books that you've read and because of an inspirational teacher, then say that. If it's something genuinely that you've wanted to do since you were in primary school, that's absolutely fine, and say that too, but don't feel the need to make up something. I wanted to do this since I was sort of 2 years old. There's no need for that. I think you need to focus on why. Why did it make you? What about it? What about the book? What about the experience that you had? That needs to come across in the introduction. There's one thing that I always, every year, I wish I could articulate, but there needs to be something in your personal statement that makes the tutor, the admissions tutor, go, oh, that's interesting. That would be a really good thing to have in each. Wow, that I can see that she's interested. I can see that he's really keen on the subject because of that. That's what you need to get across in the introduction. So I'm not expecting you to read this. You can pause the video in a sec and just look at this bit that I've cut out of a previous personal statement. But this is just an opening indicating why the student is interested in doing psychology. Talking about why she's interested in the brain, how it links to her past. Now, for this particular student, the childhood stuff about her mum being affected by bipolar and clinical depression actually is important, and it is believable, therefore, that she was thinking about people's brains from a younger age. So it made sense for her to put it in. That's not going to be the case for everyone, and obviously you don't have to go that personal. You don't have to be putting your trauma onto the page, but if there is something specific, and there was in this case, that made you interested in it, then say it. There is sort of nothing more personal than your own reason for finding the subject interesting. So perhaps have a pause and just have a read through. So the next bit is academic links to the course that you're applying for. Now, most people are going to enjoy writing about sort of the extracurricular stuff they've done, but this has to be the bulk of the personal statement. Why are you going to be a good student, and proof of you being a good student? So I reckon we're talking about 50% at least. Some people say up to 75% of your course needs to be based on this. So ultimately, at its core, the admissions tutor reading your statement wants to know you're going to be a success. They don't want to take on people who are going to take up a place in university and then drop out or fail later on. So some evidence beyond the predicted grades that you're going to get and your former grades that prove you're good at this subject are going to be really key. So pick out things from each of your A-level subjects that you think are linked to the course you're going to do. Now, if you're applying for biology, obviously that's key. You talk about the things you're good in biology, but we need proof. Don't just say, I am good at biology. Pick out specific bits, refer to a test, refer to a practical that was done, and do this across other A-levels. If you're applying for economics, but you're also doing maths and politics, there are 2 things there that you can link in. Essay writing skills, you've got numeracy skills. There's a whole range of things that you can do that you need to try and relate. You are trying to sell yourself and prove that you have the academic ability to do that degree, so you need to do it here. So again, this is a pause job in a sec, but this little section here, you can see this student is applying for biomedical sciences, and I think clearly they have shown that they have an interest in the subject, but she's talking about things that she enjoyed or things that she was good at in lessons, and then has developed that little bit so that it says something about her as a student. She's talking about finding stuff challenging and stimulating, and that this enabled her to do extra work outside. It is all building up a picture of what she is like as a student. It's not just a list of things she liked, it is something that happened as a result. So just have a pause and have a look, but think 50% roughly of your personal statement needs to be on the skills that you have that mean that you are going to be a success. So this is something that you all need to be working on, and teachers have been talking about independent work outside the classroom for a long time, and for those of you applying to university, this is why it's key, because you have to also demonstrate to the admissions tutors that you're interested in the subject, not just in the classroom. Anyone can just do the homework and go home and do other things. They want to know that you've read around the subject, that you're interested. Not just reading, maybe watching TV documentaries, podcasts, they're all really good things, but they want to know what you have done that further proves that you're really keen on dentistry, that you're really keen on sociology, criminology, whatever it might be. The key thing here, and this is absolutely fundamental, is don't just write a list. I have read book 1, 2, 3, 4 and listened to these 3 podcasts. You pick one, you pick 2, and you do something with it. You talk about it critically. You pick out a point and say why you agreed with it. You said something, you pick out something that you thought was interesting. It's so much better. I could come up with a list, nick a list of economics books. That doesn't mean that actually that proves I've read them or that I've thought about them at all. This is what you have to get across. And you can be critical. You don't have to just say, I read this and agreed with it, or I thought it was interesting. You can disagree. That's part and parcel of the cut and thrust of academic stuff. It agrees with everyone. So say it. I read this book and actually I disagreed with the viewpoint and I'm looking on researching it a little bit more. So the interesting subject outside the classroom is key, but it's not just a list. You've got to do something to prove that you read that book or listened to the podcast. So in this example, I think this is a really good one. This is a student who's applied for English literature, and clearly she's referring to books that are not on the syllabus, and she's doing more than just saying, I read this book and that book. If you look at it, she's talking about what it indicates about the characters and what it indicates about female characters in literature in general. Now, obviously, there was more that was written about this. This is just a tiny little section, but it indicates an interest that a tutor might go, oh, well, she's interested in that kind of thing. That is important in a personal statement. Give them something to raise their eyebrow and go, she sounds like she's interested, or that's an interesting thought from him. And you can do that with TV programs, YouTube documentaries and podcasts, but obviously the core of you need to have some reading. A university tutor is not going to be particularly pleased if the only additional research you've got is from Netflix and YouTube. So let's get some books in there as well. And if you haven't done that yet, you've still got some time to get reading. So those 3 bits will really have taken up the bulk of your personal statement. And for some of you, you're going to be struggling now to think, well, how do I fit the rest in? It's 4,000 characters. There isn't any way of getting through it. So this is why the drafting process is important. Your first draft is not going to be 4,000 characters. You'll have to work out what is the fat that can be trimmed out? What is the stuff that's really important? But the next bit that we move on to is work experience. Now, if you've got relevant work experience, if you're looking for a vocation, if you're going into law or medicine or teaching or some kind of finance-based job, let's focus on that first. Let's put those down. But many of you have got part-time jobs or have had other work experience placements. That's fine as well. But as with the reading, it's not about listing. I worked here, 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 and here. You need to focus on the skills that you have got. So we need to be thinking about working under pressure, time management, leadership, all of those kind of things. Whilst doing this, I learned this about myself. This job proved that I can do this. They're important skills. So whether it's sort of working in McDonald's, that might not seem particularly important for a law degree, but actually it does prove that you can work under sort of fairly pressurized situations and you can work with other people. So it's thinking, and this is what you need to take time with. Think about, how am I going to make the things that I have done relevant to university? You'll get there. So this is a really good example of this, I think. So this student worked at an after-school club in a local primary school and is applying for sort of a biomedical degree. It doesn't seem like it's relevant in any way, science, working with little kids. But what she's done is she's picked out skills that she's got: communication, responsibility, teamwork, punctuality. Now, she could have given examples of those, but actually we're limited in characters. So it's fine. I think someone would have an understanding of what working with young children would be. And when you say, yes, that's proved I'm responsible, they go, yes, it does. So you don't need to keep referring all the time. It's 4,000 characters, remember. But they want to know why you're telling them about that thing. Refer to the skills that you have gained. Right, so again, we're running out of time and space in many people's personal statements here, and this is one of the disappointing bits. There are students every year who have done, a gazillion different things over their time in school and are now devastated they've got to cut them out. But realistically, you're applying for a degree in science, you're applying for a degree in maths. How interested really are they that you captain the rugby team and that you're grade 8 on the flute? It says something about you, but it's not going to get you into university on its own. So depending on how academic the universities you're applying for, and depending on how competitive the course are, you're going to spend less time on this. The academic is more important. Oxbridge, for example, are pretty clear. They're not really interested in the sport and the music that you've done. They will love it, and there's opportunities when you get to university, but in terms of applying, you are applying for the academic course, not because you're good at the trumpet. So what you need to do is think again about the skills that you have gained. Maybe you could put stuff together. So the fact that you have been able to juggle a job with playing for a football team and at the same time being part of an external choir, that says something about your time management. And again, a tutor's going to go, of course it does. That if you're able to get these results while doing those things, that says something about you. You don't have to go into huge levels of detail, but don't just list. Tell them why you think that is important to applying for a degree course. So I'm not going to spend too long looking at this. You can read this through. This does that. It talks about a few different things the student's done. There aren't specific examples, but it's clear that the student is running out of time and they've gone, okay, these are things I've done. I'm sure you can believe that these are the skills that I've got. So they've talked about teamwork and leadership and creativity and those kind of things. This works quite well as a paragraph on this. And finally, the conclusion. Now, the conclusion is nowhere near as important on a UCAS personal statement as it is for an essay. An essay, it kind of pulls everything together and so many of the marks are available for it. It really is just a nice little, like, tying a bow on it for a UCAS personal statement. So you could talk about things you want to do in the future, areas of study, goals you've got. You could go back to the why you love the subject. I wouldn't go too far in the future goals, jobs you want to get, because they're not giving you a place to become a barrister in London in 10 years' time. They're giving you a place on their law degree. You've got to keep focusing on what you want to do. It's an interesting thing. I'm doing this degree because I have a desire to do that. That's fine. That's enough. You don't have to go into huge levels of detail. Much, much better to invest more time in characters in the academic sections beforehand than sort of real beef out a conclusion at the end. But it does work well just to bring it together, and it'll feel weird for you if you don't have one. So a sentence or two at the end, perhaps doing a couple of those things would work. Okay, nearly there, I promise. So just a few don'ts to finish up with. So don't be cliche. As I mentioned before, I don't believe you wanted to be a nurse from when you were playing with a dress-up kit when you were 2. I don't think that is believable, so don't say it. Don't use the word passion. That ultimately is what they want you to be demonstrating, why you're really keen on the subject and why it's the thing you want to spend your next 3 years of your life doing. The word passion is the most overused one, so don't just overuse that word. Quotes. A lot of people are told start with a quote, a Nelson Mandela quote, you know, a famous scientist, a Marie Curie quote if you're wanting to apply for physics. All of the good ones will have been written down by someone else beforehand, and this is supposed to be personal. This is supposed to be different. Don't use a quote. Don't be verbose. Don't be overly complicated. Just make it nice and simple, nice and clear. Obviously, you don't want to write like a 10-year-old, but they're not expecting you to be Oscar Wilde either. Just write normally. The things that you can do, prove it, why you're interested, what skills have you got, that will be fine. And the final don't is don't try and be funny. Humour is really, really subjective, and you trying to be funny in a personal statement might make someone chuckle. That's literally the best thing that will happen. Someone will go, that was funny. They're not going to give you a place because you made them laugh. The worst thing is someone might think, well, that's ridiculous. This student isn't serious. They're not. If they're joking at this stage, then they're not really someone that we want. Don't use humour. It's not going to work. There's no need for it. You can be funny when you get to university. There's no need to do it on the application. So, in summary, this is important. Start soon. Once you've decided what course you want to do, start making a list. Start thinking of the things you're going to write. Have a big bit of paper and just think, why am I interested? Do a little brainstorm. Think about the things that you're interested in lessons. Think about the subjects that you do and what skills there might be. You need a big bit of paper and you need to start making notes, and then you can pull it together. It's got to be personal. The reason I don't like giving loads of examples and loads of sort of pro formas of personal statements is personal. It needs to come from you, and the tendency would be to, well, I'll copy that and I'll just change some of the words. We don't want any of that. This guide, if you focus on it through those 6 points, will help. If you want some more advice, absolutely fine. There are lots of other guides in addition to this, but the structure that is here is going to work for you. So that's all good. You can look at different places, but I think, broadly speaking, this is a good way of working on it. The thing I'd say about drafts, and I say this to students every year, you need to get different people to look at it. I'd start with people at home. I'd start with brothers, sisters, mums, dads, whoever. Get people to look at it. You might know people that work at universities. That's fine. I would think about giving it to your film tutor when you come in, your subject teacher of the subject that you're wanting to learn. But there is no point printing off 6 copies and giving it at the same time to 6 different people, because we will all say something different. If a personal statement was given to Mr. Coffey, to Mr. Hallam, to me, to Mrs. Hines and your tutor and your subject teacher, we would all have different things to say about it, because there just isn't one single way to write a personal statement. So I would advise one draft, give it to someone, ask for them back. The teachers are likely to be busy, very, very busy in September. So you need to go to them and check and say, could I come and see you next? When is a good time to come and see you to go through my personal statement? And they can sit down with it. Don't give it to them and do nothing for 2 months, because teachers will forget. We're all busy. It's your personal statement. But once you've got the feedback and some advice from that draft, then give it to someone else. Don't just send it out to 5 different people at once, because you'll get different bits of information. And obviously, it's going to 5 different people anyway. It's going to 5 different admissions tutors, and they will all have their different opinions. As long as it's you, as long as it's personal, as long as it gives the information and sells you, that will be absolutely fine. We're in school. If you've got any questions, please do ask. But hopefully this will help, and you can go back and watch it. Stick to that 6-point structure. Make the point. Prove the points. That's the key bit. Thanks, everyone.